Hey guys, this skill video covers Unit 1, Skill 3, which is on evaluating an expression. So, evaluating an expression means that we're going to plug a number in for x and simplify. Okay, so after heading your notes, let's get to our first example. So we're going to see expressions that we were looking at last week with the distributive property, with combining like terms, except now we're going to have a value to plug in for the variable. So here we're going to have a z, parentheses, y minus 4, parentheses. Now to evaluate, all right, so when it says to evaluate, we have to have something to actually plug in, a value, okay? So off to the side, it might say, let z equal -5 and y equal -3. Right, so to evaluate, you have to be given values to plug in for each of the variables in the expression. Okay, so here we go. If this is z, then in that spot for z, we put a -5. Okay, so as we rewrite, it's 4 minus -5. Okay, and then let's see. Now we have the y's inside there. We're going to plug a -3 in for that y when we get there. So now it's parentheses -3, and now bring down the -4 parentheses. Okay, and now we're going to use our order of operations to simplify this down. Okay, so remember that that's our PEMDAS, right? So PEMDAS. So here I'm seeing some subtraction near the beginning. I do have a double negative there. That can become a plus. We've got some parentheses stuff here. Okay, so maybe we should start there. So next step, let's do 4. It's fine to make that a +5 right there. That's not going to hurt anything. And then in these parentheses, -3 minus 4 is -7. Okay, now we do have some multiplication right here before we do the addition. So next step, we bring down the 4. 5 times -7 is -35, so -35. Okay, and then last step, when we subtract, we get -31. So this answer, this is the value that we get for the expression when z was the -5 and y was -3. Obviously, if we had z and y be other numbers, we'd get a different final value for our answer. Okay, but in this case, it's -31. Okay, now let's look at a second example. Okay, so number 2, -5p minus q squared. We're going to let p equal -6 and q equal 1. All right, so whenever I plug in a number, I want to think of plugging it into this like tight set of parentheses right around that variable. Okay, now this expression is called a quadratic expression because there's the squared right there. So we need to make sure we know how to simplify with that squared sign. So let's go ahead and plug in. We've got -5. Okay, times this p value, which is -6, minus, and then a set of parentheses as we plug in the q, and q is just 1, squared. And now we simplify. So with our order of operations, right, P, E, M, D, A, S, we do have an exponent, right? There's nothing actually in the parentheses to simplify. They're just single numbers, so we kind of skip over that, and we go to exponents. And so this is our exponent right here, right? 1 is being raised to the second power. So in our next step, I've got -5 times -6 minus, and then 1 times 1 is just 1. Okay, so we are done with the exponent step. Now I do have some multiplication here. -5 times -6 is positive 30, and 30 minus 1 is 29. So 29 is the value of this quadratic expression. All right, let's take a look at a third example. Let's do x plus x minus, here are some new symbols for this year, plus y. So those lines around the 3, that's absolute value. Okay, and we're going to let x equal 7, and y can also equal 7. Okay, so first of all, just for your notes, these symbols, those are absolute value. We'll be doing a lot more with those later in this unit. Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to plug in for the x, that x, and then also this y, right? So here we go. 7 plus 7. Now those parentheses aren't super important since the 7's positive, right? But I'm just putting them in there. And then subtract the absolute value of 3, and then plus this other 7. Okay. Now, the parentheses I put around the 7's aren't that important, but when we think of the order of operations, our PEMDAS, these absolute values symbols are actually considered kind of like a parenthesis. It's a grouping symbol. It's grouping that 3 inside there, and it's actually something that we need to do something with and that we can simplify. So when you take the absolute value of 3, it's kind of like how far is 3 from 0? It's like a distance measurement, and so the answer is always positive coming out of there. So whether this were positive or negative, it comes out as the positive version. Okay, so that's just a 3. Now let's bring everything down around it. This 7, I said it wasn't important to have the parentheses, plus this 7 minus this 3 that came out of the absolute value, plus the final 7. Okay, so this subtraction sign, right, that can be there because it was outside the absolute value, okay, not the inside. The inside comes out as this positive 3 here. All right, now let's just combine these. 7 plus 7 is 14. 14 minus 3 is 11. And finally, 11 plus 7 is 18, right? I just did my addition, subtraction, left to right. Final value, 18. And finally, let's take a look at, there we go, number 4. If we have y over 2, parentheses, y plus x minus y. All right, and we're going to let x equal 4 in this problem, and y equal -10. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug in for each of these spots, right? Okay, so the y is -10, so out front we've got -10 over 2. Now inside these parentheses, we're starting with a -10. It's not super important that that's in parentheses. we're adding to it the x value, which is a 4, so plus 4, and then we're subtracting the y value. Now the y value is also negative, so we're subtracting, right, it's a minus, and then in that y spot we're plugging in a 10, and we know that that double negative there really means a positive. So instead of writing minus negative 10, we might just change this to plus 10, right? So this I just wrote as plus 10 because it was subtracting a negative. And now we simplify, right? Order of operations tells us to do what's in the parentheses first. So I'm going to simplify this down. So negative 10 plus 4 plus 10 is just 4, right? Whoops. The negative 10 here, the positive 10, they kind of cancel each other out to 0. So we are just left with 4. So we did what was in the parentheses, okay? Now, what we have left, this negative 10 over 2, that's division, right? And then with the next to the parentheses, that represents multiplication. So if we're doing the MD step of PEMDAS in order, we're doing what comes first, left, to right. So we do want to do what's in that blue box first, that division, and it really makes it quite simple. So negative 10 divided by positive 2 is negative 5, and then we multiply by the 4, and our answer is then negative 20. Okay, so that's the value to the original expression. So the main thing that I wanted to show in this problem was right up here at the very beginning, right? There was a minus y in there, and then y itself was a negative 10, and remember that that double negative, we turned it into this plus 10. So try to remember to do that when you work on your problem set today, okay?